Welcome back! So, even though we don't have a dust jacket for the book, we are reading or discussing Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. Madame Brown. So, I took a booty load of notes, even more so than I did for the Steve Harvey book. And this is actually the second time that I'm having to do this. I don't usually do second times, but there was a glitch in the machine for the first recording, so I'm recording a second time. And I'm trying to not be grumpy about it. You know, I'm trying to work through my grumpiness. So, you know, okay. And I'm going to try to go fast because there's a whole lot of quotes and I'm going to not expound on them very much because there's a whole lot of quotes. I want to get this out of the way. Right? Okay. So, Dr. Brene Brown introduces a powerful new idea that encourages us to dare greatly, to embrace vulnerability and imperfection, to live wholeheartedly, and to courageously engage in our lives. Quote, the phrase, quote, daring greatly, comes from Theodore Roosevelt's speech, Citizenship in a Republic. The passage that made the speech famous is as follows, quote, it is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasm, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. That is such a fantastic passage, and I'm glad to know where it originated. And also, that is kind of like a preface to the introduction. And I was already taking notes then, and I was like, oh my Lanta, I'm already taking notes now? This book must be good. And it was, because it took a lot of notes. Okay. So, quote, vulnerability is not knowing victory or defeat. It's understanding the necessity of both. It's engaging. It's being all in. Shite! That was amazing. Quote, our willingness to own and engage with our vulnerability determines the depth of our courage and the clarity of our purpose. The level to which we protect ourselves from being vulnerable is a measure of our fear and disconnection. Yes. Quote, over time, I tried everything from, quote, the good girl with my, quote, perform, perfect, please routine, to clothes-smoking poet, angry activist, corporate climber, and out-of-control party girl. All of my stages were different suits of armor that kept me from becoming too engaged and too vulnerable. Each strategy was always built on the same premise. Keep everyone at a safe distance and always have an exit strategy. I read that and I was like, oh my god, are you kidding me right now? Same thing. I used to do the same thing. Quote, connection is why we are here. I like that. It was a great quote, and I definitely want and need to connect more, and I'm trying. And, you know, I am trying. It's great. Quote, what we know matters, but who we are matters more. I loved that. Quote, in line with their hypothesis, researchers found a decrease in usages such as we and us, and an increase in I and me. I've also noticed a change in my mad texting, and we've all done mad texting, so you know what I'm talking about. I've become more aware of using I or you. I try to not place blame, but sometimes it happens, you know, we human. Quote, scarcity is, quote, the great lie. That is so very true. Quote, worrying about scarcity is our culture's version of post-traumatic stress. Very so true. Quote, if we want to reclaim the essential emotional part of our lives and reignite our passion and purpose, we have to learn how to own and engage with our vulnerability and how to feel the emotions that come with it. Yes. Quote, and often the result of daring greatly isn't a victory march as much as it is a quiet sense of freedom mixed with a little battle fatigue. I smiled when I read that. I was like, yeah, I know, yeah. Quote, When we can pretend that we can avoid vulnerability, we engage in behaviors that are often inconsistent with who we want to be. Noted. Quote, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. Great quote. Is from Rush, from one of their songs. That was great. Quote, I'll only be vulnerable with someone if I'm sure they won't turn on me. Yes, it me, folks. Quote, disengagement triggers shame and our greatest fears. The fears of being abandoned, unworthy, and unlovable. Yep. Quote, trust isn't a grand gesture. So much truth in that. Quote, the people who love me and will be there regardless of the outcome are within arm's reach. Oh, that's so wonderful. Quote, if we cultivate enough awareness about shame to name it and speak to it, we've basically cut it off at the knees. Amazing thought. Quote, only when we're brave enough to explore the darkness will we discover the infinite power of our light. From Harry Potter, and I loved it. Quote, if we don't come to terms with our shame, our struggles, we start believing that there's something wrong with us, that we're bad, flawed, not good enough, and even worse, we start acting on those beliefs. This was speaking to me for real. Like, apparently she, did a secret lobotomy on me and then wrote about it. Quote, if we want to be able to move through the difficult disappointments, the hurt feelings, and the heartbreaks that are inevitable in a fully lived life, we can't equate defeat with being unworthy of love, belonging, and joy. Indeed. Quote, shame is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Yes, I felt that one. Quote, when shame descends, we almost always are hijacked by the limbic system. In other words, the prefrontal cortex, where we do all of our thinking and analyzing and strategizing, gives way to that primitive fight or flight part of our brain. Y'all know I love science, and that was really interesting. Quote, as Carl Jung said, quote, I am not what has happened to me, I am what I choose to become. Ooh, that was a nice one. Quote, I don't want to oversimplify something as complex as the response to shame, but I have to say that when it comes to men, there seem to be two primary responses: pissed off or shut down. So true. In my dealings with them. Quote, remembering that shame is the fear of disconnection, the fear that we're unlovable and don't belong, makes it easy to see why so many people in midlife overfocus on their children's lives, work 60 hours a week, or turn to affairs, addiction, and disengagement. Quote, the word persona is the Greek term for stage masks. In my work, masks and armor are perfect metaphors for how we protect ourselves from the discomfort of vulnerability. Masks make us feel safer, even when they become suffocating. Armor makes us feel stronger, even when we grow weary from dragging the extra weight around. The irony is that when we're standing across from someone who is hidden or shielded by mask and armor, we feel frustrated and disconnected. That's the paradox here. Vulnerability is the last thing I want you to see in me, but the first thing I look for in you. Yes. Quote, I had considered my constant disaster planning as my little secret. Me too. So apparently it ain't a secret. Quote, the concept of foreboding joy as a method of minimizing vulnerability is best understood as a continuum that runs from rehearsing tragedy to what I call perpetual disappointment. Some of us scramble to the bleakest worst-case scenario when joy rears its vulnerable head, while others never even see joy, preferring to stay in an unmoving state of perpetual disappointment. What the perpetual disappointment folks described as this: it's easier to live disappointed than it is to feel disappointed. It feels more vulnerable to dip in and out of disappointment than to just set up camp there. You sacrifice joy, but you suffer less pain. Yes. Quote, scarcity and fear drive foreboding joy. We're afraid that the feeling of joy won't last, or that there won't be enough, or that the transition to disappointment or whatever is in store for us will be too difficult. we've learned that giving into joy is at best setting ourselves up for disappointment, and at worst inviting disaster. And we struggle with the worthiness issue. Do we deserve our joy given our inadequacies and imperfections? What about the starving children and the war-ravaged world? Who are we to be joyful? Exactly. Quote, I learned the most about gratitude practices and the relationship between scarcity and joy that plays out in vulnerability from the men and women who had experienced some of the most profound losses or survived the greatest traumas. I've learned more about worthiness, resilience, and joy from those people who courageously share their struggles with me than from any other part of my work. Yes. Quote, joy comes to us in moments, ordinary moments. We risk missing out on joy when we get too busy chasing down the extraordinary. Be grateful for what you have. When you honor what you have, you're honoring what I've lost. Don't squander joy. Every time we allow ourselves to lean into joy and give into those moments, we build resistance and we cultivate hope. It's so true, and when I was reading those passages, I teared up. Quote, perfectionism is at its core about trying to earn approval. Yup. Quote, perfectionism is a self-destructive and addictive belief system that fuels this primary thought. If I look perfect and do everything perfectly, I can avoid or minimize the painful feelings of shame, judgment, and blame. The definition is spot on. Quote, shame enters for those of us who experience anxiety because not only are we feeling fearful, out of control, and incapable of managing our increasingly demanding lives, but eventually our anxiety is compounded and made unbearable by our belief that if we were just smarter, stronger, or better, we'd be able to handle everything. So true. Quote, relational cultural theorists have captured the extremity of isolation. They write, we believe that the most terrifying and destructive feeling that a person can experience is psychological isolation. This is not the same as being alone. It is a feeling that one is locked out of the possibility of human connection and of being powerless to change the situation. In the extreme, psychological isolation can lead to a sense of hopelessness and desperation. People will do almost anything to escape this combination of condemned isolation and powerlessness. The part of this definition that is critical to understanding shame is the sentence, quote, people will do almost anything to escape this combination of condemned isolation and powerlessness. Shame often leads to desperation, and reactions to this desperate need to escape from isolation and fear can run the gamut from numbing to addiction, depression, self-injury, eating disorders, bullying, violence, and suicide. Yes, yes, yes. Yes. Quote, if we want to fully experience love and belonging, we must believe that we are worthy of love and belonging. That was such a light bulb moment for me. Quote, everyone wants to know why customer service has gone to hell in a handbasket. I want to know why customer behavior has gone to hell in a handbasket. When we treat people as objects, we dehumanize them. We do something really terrible to their souls and to our own. Martin Buber, an Austrian-born philosopher, wrote about the differences between an I-it relationship and an I-you relationship. An I-it relationship is basically what we create when we are in transactions with people whom we treat like objects, people who are simply there to serve us or complete a task. I-you relationships are characterized by human connection and empathy. Yeses, all the yeses. People in customer service and retail, I've been there. I know how it feels. And it's horrible. Quote, much of the beauty of light owes its existence to the dark. And that's such a beautiful sentence. I'm going to do it again because I love the sentence and because a loud truck went by and I don't know if you heard. Much of the beauty of light owes its existence to the dark. Quote, don't try to win over the haters. You're not the jackass whisperer. I thought that was funny and I loved it. And so I gave this book a 5 out of 5. Really, do you have to ask why? It's good. And you should read it. It's very informative and helpful and uplifting, and it makes you think and makes you want to, do better for yourself, which I guess apparently I'm kind of on that track because the next book we're going to do is about that as well. So read the book and you will love it as much as I did. And if not, you can comment and tell me why. Okay, so the next book I'm going to be reading is called Jump, Take the Leap of Faith to Achieve Your Life of Abundance by Steve Harvey. Apparently I'm on a Steve Harvey kick, and uplifting, let's do it, we can do this, get it girl, yes, let's be chill and work it out kind of kick. So there's that. Brene Brown that's all I could come up with as a, background thing. So she's got a thing on TEDx, the TEDx Houston talk on vulnerability. That one's really great. And then this is on Netflix. It's The Call to Vulnerability. It's a Netflix special. It's a bit longer. It's really good and uplifting. I watched those as follow-ups to the book, and I really enjoyed it. And I hope you will too. And read it. And thanks for watching, and I will see you guys and talk to y'all later. Bye!